Michael Smith of Brother from Another, which follows our show every single day here on NBC Sports on Peacock. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Michael?
Good. What's up, fellas?
What's
How
up,
y'all
Mike?
doing?
Hey,
I
Mike.
guarantee
Yes.
it's going to be a great day.
I'm going to guarantee this is a great segment. You know?
I'm with that.
And then when it's not, I'll get all the questions. What happened?
Yeah, but if it's not, like, so what? Like, what's the downside of guarantee? Like, this whole thing is hilarious to me. And not y'all commentary. I just mean the fact that it's like, first of all, it's not really a guarantee. Like,
he said Mike McCarthy said we're going to win the game in D.C. That's what he said. We're going to win.
Is that a guarantee, though?
Of course it is.
We're watering down the definition of a guarantee. Like, Joe Willie Namath is like, that's not a guarantee, guys. Because a guarantee means that there's going to be some level of accountability if we don't. All he did was say the quiet part out loud. Like, you just said it, Rich. Of course he thinks we're going to win the game. Like, he just happened to say it, but that's what he should say. And I don't blame him. I blame the reaction. Like, Mike McCarthy saying we're going to win the game, that felt benign to me. That was completely innocuous. Like, okay, fine. Nothing. Okay, great. Glad you feel that way, Coach. That means absolutely nothing come this weekend.
Does it, though?
But then for it to be a whole story means, like, we're just kind of unnecessarily feeding into it. And Ron Rivera is like, okay, great. You want to clap back, but you're clapping back at something that wasn't really that deep to begin with. And do they even have bulletin boards anymore? Like, bulletin board material. That's kind of like water cooler talk. Like, we don't even do that anymore. We don't have bulletin boards. I don't know. It just felt like a whole bunch, much ado about nothing.
I don't know, Michael. If the Cowboys lose this weekend, you don't think you're going to hear from a bunch of Washington football team players saying, we heard that. We know about that. How's that guarantee? Absolutely.
So
absolutely. And Michael,
they're gonna lose because he guaranteed it, and the Washington football team got extra fired up because the coach, quote unquote, guaranteed it, because the coach said we're going to win. So the Washington football team got up. So if you're the Washington football team, you got to reach so deep for motivation against a division rival with your playoff lives on the line that you have to step back and say that somebody's saying what you yourself believe, somebody saying it out loud, somehow offends you to the point of getting you motivated to play your arch rival.
Michael, if so, I think you and I might share similar qualities and sensibilities. If I said to you, okay, something similar, if somebody said something similar to me about my show, my performance, this thing that I have so much care and love for with a bunch of guys that I come to work with and ladies that I come to work with every single day, and says we're less than because they're going to guarantee that they're going to have a better show or something like that. I'm trying to give some sort of an analogy. Mm-hmm. Of course, my show is still going to be as good as it would have been, in my estimation, without that statement being made. But I will absolutely have a little bit of pep in my step and high step over how terrific the show is. You know what I mean? Like, there is a certain competitive nature. And if there's any figure in professional sports that knows the variables that goes into winning and how difficult it is to win and how to make sure that winning has to be the most important thing, and thus anything else that could potentially put a roadblock in front of it needs to be avoided. It's a head coach of a National Football League team. Certainly the Dallas Cowboys.
I would agree.
I was stunned. I was stunned that he said that.
Okay,
stunned.
And that's the part that I'll agree with. Is the juice worth the squeeze? What's the upside? What's the upshot of saying we're going to win? What do you get out of it? Okay, other than unnecessary quote unquote controversy. All right, but I also counter that by saying, well, what's the downside? It's kind of like going for it on fourth down and saying, well, I believed in my players. So it's like if you say we're going to win and you don't win, is somebody really going to begrudge Mike McCarthy? Okay, forget about the football team saying, yeah, we heard that and it fired us up. But is anybody in Dallas going to say, damn it, Mike McCarthy, why'd you have to say that you thought you were going to win the game? Because don't you play to win the game? And in your analogy in terms of, like, the show thing, all right, if I said, and again, I'm just kidding here, you know that. But if I said,
yes,
man, Rich Eisen is overrated, Rich Eisen sucks, he ain't interesting, okay, that's so-called bulletin board material. But, like, it's not like you and I are competing per se because we just try to follow your show. So it's a little bit different when it's somebody that's going out and their job comes at the expense of somebody else's job. One team got to lose, one team got to win. Ordinarily, there are ties in the NFL for those that are still uncertain about that.
Yes.
So ordinarily one team got to win, one team got to lose. But I just don't see why he should be criticized for saying something that they all are wired to believe to begin with.
Michael.
You know what I mean? It's almost like halftime speeches, man. It's like we don't ever hear about the halftime speeches that don't work. You know, when they lose, don't nobody talk about what they said at halftime or what they said Saturday night before the game. So Mike McCarthy said his team was going to win. Okay, great. That's what I would like to think you feel that way. And if the football team needs to manufacture motivation, great, good for you. Ultimately, none of it's going to matter once the ball gets kicked off.
Yeah,
Sorry for the cliche.
So you're saying we're not hearing what Mike Zimmer's halftime speech was last night today? We're not going to.
Right? I mean, did it matter?
Should I ask Dalvin Cook that one?
Better than his halftime speech. Did he even give a halftime speech for crying out loud?
Michael Smith here from Brother from Another on the Rich Eisen Show.
You don't suck, by the way. You're really good at
that. No, I feel the same way. And
I never believed that I was going to.
Whatever. Okay. So what do you make of the Lakers, man? I mean, that where it's not Christmas time yet. There's still much time to go. But, I mean, now we've got what is it now? 26, 27 games or 25 games of actual playing, right? This week, games 25 through 27. And it's mediocre. There's just no other way to put it. It is average. It is average basketball that we're seeing. So what do you think?
That actually might be generous at various points because I got all excited the other day. I promised that I would get off the roller coaster, and I got all excited about them beating the Celtics. I'm not a Lakers fan, by the way, for the record. But I started to think, maybe this is the team we thought that they could be. Maybe they're rounding into form at both ends. Russell Westbrook has been playing better lately. They've been defending better lately. Maybe the team against the Celtics, albeit, the Celtics aren't world beaters, and we're missing Jaylen Brown. Maybe they're starting to find themselves a little bit, and then they go and lose to the Ja Morant-less, although very competitive lately, Memphis Grizzlies. I think they'll end up somewhere between the finals favorite that they were and this mediocre version that we're seeing now. I don't think that this is who they are, and I don't think they'll be worse before it's all said and done, barring injury, if that makes sense.
So we're seeing the floor.
I think this is the floor, and maybe I'm being naive, but I do think this is the floor because even within the 20-something game sample size we now have, and you're right, it's still not Christmas, unofficial start of the season, I think you have to parse that and say, well, how many games were they missing LeBron? How many games have they missed, or all of them, they've been missing some key players, So I wouldn't necessarily make any grand proclamations about them right now. Trevor Ariza, so I was trying to remember. Trevor Ariza, Kendrick Nunn, whatever.
That's about it, yeah. I mean,
their rotation hasn't been complete. And not to mention, it should be a work in progress integrating a Russell Westbrook into a team that has two players already through whom the offense should run in LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So work in progress to begin with, but when you don't all have all your tools at your disposal, a longer work in progress. Right now, if I'm a Lakers fan, I'm just going to sit back and look forward to and enjoy winning time. Because that trailer was fire.
Yeah.
Nostalgic in the meantime.
No, I know that's the problem is, none of those guys are going to be walking through that door, but they do have an all-time great in LeBron James, who did seem to chafe a bit last night when talking about all the different rotations that Vogel's going through, just, in search of the right one, that they're, that he's playing with a bunch of guys that he's trying to figure things out because there's no set rotation. There's no real set five in a way outside of the four, OGs in a way. And right now the Lakers are putting themselves in position for another play-in game. If that happens for a second straight year, that would be wild. What do you think about the Blazers? Do you think Damian Lillard is going to wind up elsewhere by next year? Something? What do you think?
I don't believe so. There are two stories this week that came up for various reasons that I feel like you should strongly consider retiring. One is the when will Tom Brady retire story.
Okay.
Two is when will Damian Lillard actually ask out? Now, that doesn't mean that it can't get so bad until he and whoever is the full-time general manager and Jody Allen can't come to some kind of agreement about what's best for him and the organization mutually. But even though it kind of felt like he was headed in that direction in the offseason with some of the things he said after the Nuggets loss, I don't think Damian Lillard, and we just got to accept this, Damian Lillard is not that dude that's going to say, man, you know what, this ain't going to work here. Y'all got to trade me to a contender. I'm going ring chasing. He's never been that dude. He's not that dude. And everybody else holding their breath thinking he's going to be that dude. Like, this guy is 10 toes down professionally and personally in Portland, you know, for a variety of reasons, a lot of them off the court. Like, that's his home, and that's where he wants to be, no matter how much we've come so far in the rings culture that not only are we okay with guys forming super teams or chasing rings with contenders, but now when somebody doesn't do it, we look at them sideways like, yo, what's wrong with you, man? Get with the program. You're supposed to be trying to get with the Lakers or the Nets or form a super team somewhere. What's taking you so long? I don't think he's going to do that. To me, it really comes down to and you and I have had this conversation a lot. We've all had this conversation quite a bit, fellas, is does Daryl Morey blink? Because I think if I'm going to start shaking it up in Portland, I know he's going through a lot right now. He's got a baby on the way. He's got a collapsed lung. I think it starts with C.J. McCollum. I think they're too redundant and have been for a while in the backcourt. I think it starts with, can Portland put together a deal that gets Ben Simmons to Portland and improves that defense? And if and when Damian Lillard decides and the organization collectively decides that he needs to move on somewhere else, whether it's we don't want to extend you or it's run its course and you want to go for a fresh start against his reputation, then at least you have Ben Simmons to build around. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Sixers are 14-12, so I don't know if that's desperate enough. But they're certainly not at the top of the pack like they were last year.
How would you solve it in Portland? Where would you start?
I don't know, man. No, I know the way my guy Chris Brockman would just tell Lillard, you're out. You know,
Boom.
and
Blow
send
it
him like he's
Blow it up, Mike.
that he is easily the best chip that you can cash in for multiple picks to try and just restart. I just don't see that.
Some like take a look at the bad guy type thing. Like, okay, I'll do the uncomfortable thing, and I'm going to trade you, Damian Lillard. Like
pretty much, but I think that's a non-starter in that town. They have a different fan base than most over in Portland. You know, and that I think they want Lillard. I think Lillard wants them, and they're just going to try and figure it out. I don't know how you do, because it is a very difficult puzzle. Certainly with a new coach there and Billups, and it's just not working. It's terrible. And McCollum, it might be the piece that you trade if you can, and I hate to refer to him as such, or the player that you trade. But he's hurt. I don't know. You got to play through it. Let Lillard come back Sunday, as the report is, and see if that gets better. Can he just carry the team by himself?
Well, he hasn't been playing well.
Well, he's been hurt.
Not bury that. He's been hurt and not playing well. So it's not as though, this is the Dame Lillard we left in the playoffs last year. So he bears some responsibility in it as well.
And I've been definitely, talking about the Brady retirement story this week, not because I'm trying to drum anything up, to be honest with you. It's because I saw a quote in a piece in Sports Illustrated that I'd never heard out of. I'd never heard out of his mouth before.
Which one?
The one where he says that when he called winning a relief. It's not like the joy; it's a relief, because when you win, sometimes just winning isn't good enough for you because you expect perfection, and that's what I hear from people that just suddenly decide it's just not worth it, which is something that I've never thought I would ascribe to him. I never like the winningest, the guy who's won more. No one's ever going to win like Brady ever again. Right. And I feel very safe in saying that. That generations will come and go, knocking on wood on this planet, and where football can be played, and we'll never ever see a winning. Like they could rename the trophy the Brady Trophy one day, and people shouldn't bat an eyelash, with all due respect to the Lombardi family. And he's calling it a relief. That kind of stood out to me.
Well, a couple of things. So that was the story I was talking about, because he got Sports Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And that's what I was referring to. I was like, just the idea of when he's going to call it quits. So the regression comment jumped out to me, because
right.
He's like, I don't want to get bad. Well, he's the best quarterback in the league right now, and he's about to be the MVP again. So does he regress to where he was? If conventional wisdom says he's playing as well, if not better than ever at 44,
right?
regression only looks like him being not old as in age Tom Brady, but old as in previous iteration of Tom Brady. From a physical standpoint, he's not going to get dumber per se. So from a physical standpoint, he's got enough mental acumen to be able to offset whatever arm strength he may lose, but his arm is as strong as ever. So that was the part that jumped out to me. But even in terms of the relief thing, I didn't read it as a negative. I read it as people like Tom Brady are driven by that. Like it's almost like it's like a burden that they enjoy bearing, if that makes sense.
Right, I know, but then the enjoyment finally wears off because that's the whole point about it. Is that you know how it works in this business? It's either your choice to retire or Father Time's choice that you retire, and he doesn't want to be in the middle of a season where Father Time makes that choice for him.
I don't think Father Time. I think first of all, talk about that. Father Time is holding the L. Like that fight. I was saying it yesterday. We can't keep talking about Father Time is undefeated. No, Father Time has lost, and he doesn't just get to fight, forever. Like he's lost to Tom Brady. In the event that Tom Brady actually does decide to retire, that does not go in the ledger as a victory for Father Time. Because the fact that he's playing just at 44 counts as a win. That's number one. Number two, I think he's addicted to it. Maybe there's some sort of masochism involved. I don't know, but I think, and it's funny because we thought that the misery was a product of strictly Bill Belichick. They're more alike than maybe the conversation around his departure would lead us to believe. Like, oh, he was just so tired of being taken for granted and being a miserable environment in New England. It's like, no, that's how Brady's wired too. So I think that misery is what keeps him going. If he ever started to feel a sense of joy about winning, and listen, I'm spitballing here because I don't know what it's like to be Tom Brady, but I imagine if he ever started to feel a sense of joy about winning, joy may come dangerously close to satisfaction. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Like I think and most greats say this, whether it's Jordan, whether it's Brady, a lot of great athletes and competitors say it's not. I think Pat Riley especially. It's not the winning. It's the, I feel better. The losses hurt more than the wins feel good.
Right, exactly.
But I think that's what drives them, though. I think that's what makes them great. I don't think it's a negative. I don't think it's going to drive him to retirement. I think it's what drives him to keep playing is that, sorry, Lexus, but that relentless pursuit of perfection.
Michael Smith, everybody, from
Yes,
Brother
sir.
from Another.
Yes, sir.
Thanks as always, Michael. Appreciate it. Let's do this again.
Was that a great segment?
I thought it was.
Sure?
I, however, in my own, potential, this is my insecurity. It's my problem. This is an MP, not a YP. It's my problem. I feel like over the last couple times you've called in, I've made you talk about topics you find less than. I mean, you like to you want to retire these two topics, and I brought them up to you, and we chopped it up, and then I mentioned something from another guy from another network who shares the same last name as you. You brought that up. That was a problem. I just want to make sure if you want to set the agenda next time, you just let me know. Let's talk some topics that you're into. So I appreciate it.
I see what you tried to do there, Rich. I love our topics. I love our chat.
Right back at you.
I hope you and your listeners do as well. Let them be the judge. I put it on a poll or something. Was that a victorious?
Okay, there you go. Very good. Have a great show later on. Thanks for the call, Michael.
All right, man. Y'all be good.
Michael Smith, everybody. Brother from Another follows us on NBC Sports on Peacock. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.